Welcome. Today I'm going to share my thoughts on the Triumph Speed 400, as a few people have asked in the comments previously about this bike. My usual disclaimer, I'm no moto journalist, I'm no professional rider. There are plenty of review videos out there that get into the nitty-gritty details of this bike and compare it with the Guerrilla 450. This video is just what I've observed while owning these two bikes and what it's like as a Guerrilla 450 rider to spend time with the Speed 400. So let's get into it. The looks. This has to be one of the best looking small neo-retro motorcycles on the market. It looks good from every angle, and it's the small details that set this bike apart. From the front you have the all LED lighting, which is becoming standard on most bikes these days, but you do have that nice little Triumph logo in the center of the headlight. I do like the big piston upside down fork, although I'm not really sold on the gold color. The radiator is rotated and sort of hidden a little bit in the frame when compared to my Guerrilla 450. The Guerrilla's got this big chunky landscape radiator right in the front, whereas Triumph, they've attempted to hide that a little bit. The exposed metal fins on the engine block, the exhaust shield that hides that catalytic converter and all the things that are going on in the exhaust underneath. It sort of tricks you into thinking that it's one solid pipe all the way through. I do like the shape of the factory muffler, and this bike does have a nice sound as well. The tank has this nice deep glossy paintwork and the chrome filler cap, which is really nice. The seat has this contrast stitching and the Triumph logo on the back, and even just small things like the detail on these subframe bolts here. Overall, it's a very attractive bike with a lot of effort put into the design. At 170 kilograms wet is nice and light, which is a real big plus for my wife. She's a smaller person, so moving it around can be difficult. From what I understand, a lot of older riders are sort of trading in their bigger bikes for something small because it's much more manageable around the garage. The lightweight means that it's very easy to manage for slow maneuvers as well, so it makes it very nice to ride around slow speed in the city. The seat height is 790 mil, which is very slightly taller than the Guerrilla. You don't really feel a big difference, I don't think. It's still very manageable for shorter riders. It does feel very slim when you're sitting on it. The Guerrilla has that sort of big tank, slightly wider seat. This bike's lightweight, nice and slim, really easy to manage. Both put out about 40 horsepower. However, when compared to the Guerrilla, the Triumph makes less peak torque, and it makes that peak torque higher in the rev range. When I ride this bike back to back with the Guerrilla, for me it doesn't quite feel as eager to get off the line, and you probably need to just rev it a little bit harder to get it going. That's not a criticism, that's just what I've observed. The Guerrilla does have an extra 54 cc's and a different architecture in terms of the bore and the stroke, and I think it just probably suits my riding better. I'm pretty relaxed. I'm not really interested in winding it out everywhere. So for me, the Guerrilla feels good off the mark. The handling is really agile, light. You can have a lot of fun on this bike, and really that's what it's all about. If you take one for a run in the countryside or on a twisty road, I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Let me just say, the Triumph Speed 400 is a great bike. I believe they've probably sold at least twice as many of this bike as they have of the Guerrilla 450. Just going off some sales figures that I've seen over the last 12 months. If you own a Speed 400, congratulations, so do I. I've paid money for it. It's a good bike. There are some things that don't really work for me. Those things really just push me to the Guerrilla as my preferred bike, but I'm lucky enough to get the opportunity to ride both. So gripe number one for me is the dash. For me, the dash is completely back to front. It's obviously designed to invoke that retro imagery. The speed reading being the needle on some fairly broad increments means that you don't really know what speed you're doing. For me, the tack is equally as useless. It's this tiny little bar graph, and I think the odometer actually takes up more real estate on the dash than the tachometer does. For me, the tach needs to be that big sweeping dial. This bike is all about clicking through the gears, getting up in the revs, having some fun. So why wouldn't you make a big sweeping tach part of that experience? Speaking about clicking through the gears, my second gripe is the gearing. It just feels a little bit low to me. When I jump on these bikes back to back, straight away I just feel like first gear's over in an instant. Many owners are changing the sprockets on the Triumph 400s, and that's fine, but to me it just feels like maybe they should have come out of the factory with slightly different gearing. On my very first ride home from the dealer on this bike, I actually hit the rev limiter in first because I wasn't expecting it to be so short. Anyway, if we keep this bike long term, I think I'll probably have a look at changing the gearing. Seating position, for me, there's just something not quite right about the seating position. I don't know whether it's the position or it's the bar or the grip, but quite often I'll get numb hands on this bike. I understand that singles vibrate, but it just doesn't feel as comfortable as maybe it could be. Chain maintenance. So there's no center stand on this bike and the chain is tucked up underneath the exhaust. Yes, the chain on that side is a Triumph design thing, so I get that. It doesn't change the fact that it's just a little bit more difficult to get up in there and clean and lube the chain. If I clean and lube both chains at the same time, the Royal Enfield, obviously up on the center stand, chain is on the left-hand side, very easy. This is just more difficult. When I put it on the paddock stand sits here, so then it's in the way of me getting to the chain as well. I think that a rear wheel roller would probably be the best option for this, so I'll have a look at getting one of those for the Triumph, because if you can roll it up onto a roller, the bike is still leaned over, gives you a little bit better access to the chain, and you can rotate the wheel and rotate the chain. The service indicator reset cannot be done by the owner. If you do your own servicing, that's an issue. Some owners have reported that they've been able to have it reset by the service centre for free. Other people have said they've had to pay for that privilege. I'm not a fan of my local dealer, so I have not taken the bike there to see if they'll reset the indicator for me. I had my first service done on this bike through the Royal Enfield dealer where I bought my Guerrilla, and they obviously have very expensive industry standard workshop tools, OBD readers, and they couldn't even reset the service indicator with their tools. The check engine light has come on a number of times. It seems to come on every couple of 100 kilometers. When that happens, there's a no start situation with the bike. So you turn on the key, you don't get any fuel pump priming, you've got no ability to start the bike. You have to cycle the ignition to bring it back to life. It will start after that, but it then will have a check engine light permanently on the dash. This is an issue that has affected a lot of Speed 400 owners, I think, early in the sale of this bike. It doesn't seem to be a real problem for me. I've been able to cycle the ignition. So once you get the check engine light, you have to cycle the ignition, I think, half a dozen times, and it will clear that light. Many people have had their software updated by Triumph, so quite possibly this needs an ECU update. But I also read from some owners that once they had that update, they then had additional problems with the immobilizer. So I've been hesitant to actually get the ECU updated as long as the bike is running properly and I can clear the check engine light manually by doing the whole cycling of the ignition. Then at the moment I'm happy to just leave it and deal with it as it is. So there we have it. Other than that, the bike's been pretty solid. It's enjoyable to ride, different to the Guerrilla. Personally, I prefer the Guerrilla, but I can totally understand why people like this bike. My experience with the Triumph has been soured a little bit by the whole service indicator light not being able to reset, the regular no start issue, check engine light, and the gearing. It is still an awesome little machine, and I will always remember picking it up at the dealer, riding it home for the first time. It was a nice experience. But I just haven't bonded with this motorcycle the way I have with the Guerrilla 450. I am going to get out on this bike a little more often. Maybe that will change my mind. Time will tell. But until then, ride safe. Peace.